Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yad yad acharati shreshtas, tad tad devetero jana, sayat pramanam kurute, lokas tad anuvartate. Yad yad acharati shreshtas, whatever the shreshtas or the leaders or people in positions of authority, whatever they do, yad yad acharati shreshtas, tad tad devetero jana. That is what the common man will follow. Sayat pramanam kurute, what these leaders prove in their action. Lokas tad anuvartate. The whole world will follow what the leaders do. So, there's absolutely no doubt that that one person who's at the top makes all the difference. In fact, you mentioned this book that's coming out. That's a compilation of all my articles in the business line, the column that I wrote in the business line. And one of the chapters is called Leadership, the Ultimate Competitive Advantage. That's how important leadership is. I don't believe products, processes, technology or markets are the reason for business success. I think it's only leadership. And if leadership is present, everything else is present. If leadership is absent, everything else is absent. And that's been the tragedy of this country. Leadership again is conspicuous by its absence in our country. There are so many examples of leadership failure everywhere. Failure is the norm as far as leadership is concerned. And that's why I believe, as young leaders, entrepreneurs, it is critical for each one of us to understand what is this all about, leadership, and how a leader can make a difference, not only to himself, but to everybody around him. So, organizations are like living entities. You're all business owners, and I understand all of you have businesses. Can you give me a feel of what kind of business or size of people, turnover, etc., small, medium?
We are manufacturing power electronic equipment like inverters, solar water heaters, around 500 employees.
500 employees, right? Turnover in the range of somewhere between 5 crores to 100 crores, 60 crores, yeah. Proprietary firms.
Most of them are either factories or
factories, but mostly proprietary firms or companies or partnerships, family partnerships. But you have people working for you, right? Like you said, anywhere between 10 to 500 people working. So it's a kind of a group of people working with some kind of formal or informal structure. Am I right? That's an organization. An organization is like a living organism. Like your human body has got several components and millions of parts to it. Are there any dentists here? I was reading something the other day and I found to my eternal surprise that a tooth has got 3 miles of capillaries. 3 miles of capillaries within a tooth. So you see how complex the human body is. I'm told your lungs, if you take it out and spread it out, it will be like a tennis court or more. There are hundreds of thousands of kilometers of arteries in your body. So this whole human body is a very complex organism. Businesses are like that too. They are living, breathing entities. Businesses. Because they are organizations. And now here's the important point I want to make. Profit is to an organization, to a business, what oxygen is to a human. Profit is to a business what oxygen is to a human being. A human being can survive without food for at least 40 to 45 days. But without oxygen, in 3 minutes flat, your brain dead. You're finished. Profit is like that to an organism or the organization. I'll come back to that in a little bit more detail. There was a very famous Dutch management researcher named Harry de Geus, and he wrote this book called The Living Organization. And his finding was very interesting. Human beings have life expectancy. Means as a human being, you can expect to live until a certain age. Now in India, currently the life expectancy is about 67, 66, 68 years. It was just about 40 or 45 years when we attained independence in 1947. Today, the average Indian can expect to live until the age of 68. That's a statistical average. In actual fact, many of us will live before and some of us will die before. Okay, live more than 67 and many of us will die much earlier. But on an average, 67 years is the life expectancy. Means beyond this threshold level, the so-called natural forces of entropy take over and the forces of decay will overcome the forces of growth, and therefore there will be next decay and death. That's how nature works in organisms, in human beings. The same forces apply according to Harry de Geus on organizations. Organizations also have life expectancy. Beyond a certain number of years, there is a natural tendency to die. And what is this natural tendency to die? When does it set in? According to his research, some 15 years ago, he said the life expectancy of an organization is some 20 years. But just about 7 or 8 years earlier, he revalidated his research and found, shockingly, that the life expectancy of organizations has declined from 20 years to about 11 years. And today, it will be shorter. Why? Because lots of changes have happened. And what are these changes? And this is what I would like to explain in a minute. Some of you who are used to information technology must have heard of Moore's law. Right? If you are manufacturing electronics, you will know. Moore's law states that the amount of computing you can compress into a silicon chip is doubling every 18 months. So the amount of computing you can compress into a silicon chip doubles every 18 months. In other words, it's growing exponentially. So every 18 months the amount of computing you can put in a small chip doubles. This is the reason for miniaturization, why computers have become smaller and smaller and smaller and more powerful. The first computer was called the electronic numeric integrator and calculator, ENIAC. It was built sometime in 1947-48. It occupied 7 stories, had 18,000 vacuum tubes, used as much energy as a locomotive, railway locomotive. And on an average, a vacuum tube used to blow every 3.5 minutes. And the amount of computing it could do is 100 millionth of what this can do today. So you see the exponential growth in computing capabilities. That's because of Moore's law. The amount of computing that you can compress into a silicon chip doubles every 18 months. That's why computers have grown faster, smaller, and cheaper. And then there is the Madhav Mohan corollary to Moore's law. Because of the amount of computing is doubling every 18 months as per Moore's law, I say that the stock of human knowledge is doubling every 5 years and declining. See, if you have powerful computers, you can do analysis, calculations and discoveries much faster and much quicker, cheaper than you could ever do before. Which is why science and technology has grown tremendously. Which is why new knowledge has been announced. Which is why, for example, they have just found the God particle, the boson, Higgs boson at CERN. It's all because of computing power. Because computing power is readily available, much lower costs, less use of power, cheaper, faster, more knowledge is being discovered. When more knowledge is discovered, previous knowledge becomes obsolete. And the stock of human knowledge doubles every 3 to 5 years. So when the stock of human knowledge is doubling, what was previously true is found to be untrue. And therefore the rate of obsolescence increases. And it's because this rate of obsolescence is increasing that the life expectancy of organizations is coming down. So if you think about it in your own business, are you producing the same products that you were producing 5 years ago? Or have you made changes? Is the market wanting different things? Are you using different technologies? Today, in your electronics field, obsolescence is 90 days, right? Product life cycle is about 90 days. So, organizations are subjected to declining life expectancy. So if that is so, how is it that some organizations are surviving for a long period of time? Any idea about the world's oldest company? Have you heard of it? How old do you think the world's oldest company is?
50 years.
50 years? 150 years? Okay. Any other takers?
200 years? 200 years?
200 years? Okay. Anybody else? It's like an auction now. It's about 750 years, my friends. There's a company called Stora in Sweden. Stora. You can see the website. It's 750 odd years old. How has Stora survived? If, according to this researcher, the life expectancy of companies is coming down so dramatically, how come companies like Stora are around for 700 and odd years? The answer is very simple, but it's worth thinking a lot about. Stora says, see, Stora began life as a copper smelter. Stora says, copper smelting exists for Stora. Stora doesn't exist for copper smelting. Do you understand what that means? What does it mean?
They have the monopoly.
Sorry?
They're the only ones doing it.
Yes, but something else. Copper smelting exists for Stora. Stora doesn't exist for copper smelting. Yeah?
No, it doesn't.
Diversification.
It doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a treasure hunt. You're getting closer. What else? You said something?
Another business, it can be.
Why?
Another business. Diversification.
Why no? Why should we do
To
this?
sustain
What do you mean by sustain?
Better profits.
profit.
Profit is to an organization what oxygen is to a human being. In other words, do whatever it takes to make a profit. Ethically. So, today Stora says we'll do smelting because that gives us profit. Tomorrow, if that doesn't give us profit, we'll do something else. And they've gone on to change themselves radically. Take a company like, I think it is DuPont, which is like 250 or 300 years old, DuPont. They were once a drapery shop. Then they used to make gunpowder. At some point they were also a banker. And that is why I totally disagree when people say, in our industry. First of all, what is this industry today? There's no industry really. I mean, where does one industry stop and where does another start? Who is one of the